do is come down here, unscrew the drain cap, and once we've done so, we now can turn this over, and there's a hex nut here, as you can see, that is actually going to be a tool used to take the inside stem out so that the sand will come out. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this, because first of all, by removing the cap, it only allows water to come out. By removing this inside piece, now water and sand will come out. So all we have to do, and to make this easy, is we get a garden hose, and we stick a garden hose in here, and we just go around, and as this is filling with water and we're flushing it out, it is going to allow that sand to come completely out and rinse the tank out. We want to make sure that we do rinse it out completely and we get all the sand and everything out before we put the new sand in. So now that we've got this rinsed out, we want to make sure that the laterals and everything in here are good and clean. We want to make sure that nothing's broke. Before we put the new sand in, we have to just examine that to make sure everything is good. Once this is good, then we're going to be able to come back and we're going to be able to take our center stem that removed the sand from the tank. We're going to put it back in using the cap as our tool. Once we got this in good and tight, that she's in, then we can turn this over, make sure that your gasket on the cap is still here or your tank could leak. We make sure we put this back on and it gets good and hand tight, okay? So before we put the sand in, what we want to do is we want to fill this up with water at least about this deep. And the reason for doing so is before we put the sand in, we want to fill the water up here. We want to get a rag, wipe this and dry it, and just observe this and make sure that this isn't leaking. Because if you fill this up with sand and put water in it and this is leaking and we've got to take all this apart again, you may be changing sand twice. So this way we can make sure that, hey, it's dry, nothing's leaking. Now we're going to be good to go and we can go ahead and put sand in the tank. A second reason for filling this right here is so that as we pour sand in the top, the sand isn't coming down, especially if the sand is a little wet. It's not going to fall and hit these laterals and crack and break something. The water is going to actually act as a barrier, and then we can go ahead and start putting the sand in. Once again, very important, we do not want to put sand in the pipe. Keep your cup on here. This pipe will stay center of this hole. We pour the sand in. The sand itself is only going to be at about this level. We do not fill the tank up all the way to the top. You put the required amount, and how do we know? If you go to the side of your label plate, it will always tell you how big your tank is and how much sand. And this particular tank, it's 150 pounds, so it's 3 bags of sand. Once the sand is in, then at this point, what we want to do is we want to then remove the cup. And we want to make sure that this is good and clean. We don't have any sand around it. And this is good and clean because when we put the top back on, we want to make sure everything's nice and tight so it's sealed. Another step that I like to do is I like to get Jack's Lube, which is right here. And Jack's Lube is going to allow me to lube this as well as lubing the inside of the multiport. Why do we want to lube that? So that next time you go to take this off, it will slide out. If not, sometimes it creates some friction, especially if you don't clean it and there's sand around this and you stick this in here, it makes it very difficult to get that pipe out. So by lubing it, it just allows the multiport to slide off the assembly here much easier. So now that we've got this off, we've got this lube, we've made sure this is clean, there's no sand around it. We also want to do the same thing with the multiport here and make sure that this is clean. You can lube it, like I said, it'll make it slide on and off easier. We want to make sure that this is lubed, and we want to make sure that there's no trash or sand or debris because you want a nice, clean, tight seal. So what we do when we get ready to put this on is we slide it back into position. And as you'll note, it's got a crack here. We're going to push it down, and once it goes down, we know it's nice and even all the way around. We're going to be ready to put our band on. Before we do so, we want to also make sure that you're aware when we hook this plumbing back up that we hook it up properly. This particular outlet here says pump. This one here says waste, and this one here says return. It is very important that we hook up the hoses in the right position or we're going to have a problem. So now that I've got this hooked up, I'll be able to come over here, making sure that my O-ring is still here, slide this up, and we're going to be able to tighten this back up. Okay, now we're going to put the band on. And I like to position this in a way so that I can get to my bolt when I do put it on. And we're going to take our bolt, put it in, making sure that our nut is still here so we don't lose that. We can go ahead and snug this up. And then I'm going to come over here on this side, and we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to keep this space even on both sides. And then we're going to get this side snugged up. And once we get it snug, Then I can tighten it down a little more. Then I'll come over here and I'll do the same on this side. And then what we want to do is we want to tap around and tap around. Tighten it a little bit more. Then we're going to tap around again. And the reason we're doing this and we're tightening these evenly is so that it draws in evenly. If we tighten one side and you then go try to tighten the other side, you're going to end up pinching it and you're going to probably have a leak. So at this point, now we've got it where it's going to be tight. And of course, if we turn the system on and everything's good, we're done. If we turn the system on and you do have a little bit of a leak, no worry, just turn it off, tighten the band a little bit more, and make sure that you do tap evenly all the way around and keep tightening it until the leak stops, and then you're good. If you over tighten it, that's not good, and then you may have to take this back off and reseat this multiport because you may not have it in there good. And it is also very important, like I said, to make sure you don't have any sand or trash in and around this because that will also cause it to leak.